Thank you everyone so much for taking the time to join us today. I'd like to give everyone a warm welcome for joining the United Utilities Catchment Systems Thinking Cooperative Showcase. Just give everyone a moment to hop on in. Right, so today we will hear from the CaSTCo project team and see how demonstration groups and adopters of the framework have implemented the CaSTCo approach. These case studies will showcase successful practices and provide insights to help your organization identify opportunities to implement and benefit from the roadmap of the future. I'm Lane. I'm a knowledge transfer lead at Spring Innovation. And I'd like to start off by just playing a very short video to introduce Spring Innovation and our role in supporting innovation and collaboration across the UK and Ireland's water sector.
In our industry, innovation is happening everywhere, every day. With so much going on, it's hard to keep track. The sector is tackling big, urgent challenges, like climate change, aging infrastructure, and more, but not always in a joined-up way. That's where we come in. Spring is the central innovation hub for the water sector. We gather insights from hundreds of projects across the UK and Ireland, showing who's doing what, what's working, and where the next big transformation could come from. We connect problem owners with solution providers globally, both inside and outside the water industry, to share knowledge, find partners, and accelerate ideas. This means less duplication and more efficient use of time and resources. Whether you're looking to learn from others' experiences, find collaborators, or share your own solutions, Spring makes it easy. Together, we're speeding up innovation, driving transformation, and shaping the future of our industry, both in the UK and Ireland. Spring, accelerating water sector transformation.
So Spring is designed to help you deliver against Ofwat's expectations for best practice knowledge sharing. And what we want to do is help you deliver against the Water Innovation 2050 objectives. So through our knowledge transfer service, we want to help you effectively deliver and implement end-to-end innovation projects at the right pace. We want to make sure you have access to the right skills and resources needed to deliver innovation. And of course, we want to facilitate collaboration, remove duplication, and increase knowledge sharing. I'll now also go over our vision for knowledge sharing. All right, so our vision and principles for best practice knowledge sharing in Ireland. So it's based on the 6 principles that I have on the screen here. And what we want to do is ultimately unlock faster adoption of innovative solutions across the water sector. We want to make sure we're learning from what already exists before committing to innovation projects. We want to make sure our innovation insights are targeted. A great example of this is our showcase today. We want to make sure insights are regularly shared and make sure it's shared from day one, as we know correctly have often been shared only at the very end of a project. We want to make sure knowledge is open and centralized, and that insights from both innovation successes and failures are shared to make sure we're capturing those important pivot points that occur throughout. And I'll now briefly just touch on the agenda. So we'll now just to brief the agenda. So we have an introduction, and we'll talk about the value of the CaSTCo approach, so why the project is important and what the problem it looks to solve. We'll then go into the project roadmap, so you'll learn about the vision and opportunities set out in the roadmap. We will then go more into the project delivery. So you'll learn about the project structure, participants, and demonstration catchments. We'll have a short interactive exercise. And then afterwards, you'll hear from some of our partner and demonstration groups. Please make sure you put any questions that you have into the chat. And we'll be closing. So I will now hand over to Sarah Jenner, the Head of Integrated Water Management at to give you a little more insight into the importance of the CaSTCo project. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you. It's great being up today to really just set the context for this fantastic innovation project that involved a huge range of partners. So I wanted to just really set the scene in terms of, why CaSTCo, why is this important for the water industry? And whilst this programme started before the Independent Water Commission published its report last summer, I think it actually neatly sums up the context that we're working in and why this project is so important. So, some of the recommendations and the report really highlighted were there has been a reduction in the overall monitoring of rivers due to resource constraints, and that leaves us with gaps in knowledge and potentially making, decisions or not making decisions on relatively weak data and information. The other thing identified is there are growing challenges around the efficiency of some of the monitoring and use of new technologies. So effectively, we haven't really got a coherent strategy for monitoring rivers in the UK. We've got a range of things like reduction in spot samples, growing use of citizen science, but then really significant investment going into things like continuous water quality monitoring, which is starting to happen the AMP8 period in the water industry. So I think we're looking at about £600 going into that alone in the AMP8 period. So that kind of leads us to obviously this reduced understanding of the state of rivers, suboptimal decisions, and ultimately uneven progress in improving rivers. And that is at real risk of leading to a long-term problem with legitimacy with customers, that they are seeing increased bills for lots of investment, but actually the progress isn't coming through in the metrics because we haven't got a holistic view of what needs to happen in our rivers. And we haven't necessarily got all players playing a part in that because the data is not necessarily there. So that's really the context. And then what I also wanted to highlight is, why does this really matter to customers? It matters because we're spending, as a sector, a huge amount in improving the water environment, and most of that is rivers. So in the AMP8 period, I think it was something like 23.9 billion was basically cost allowance was made by Ofwat for enhancement of the water environment. So this is a huge amount of investment, and we are going to see something similar in future for several AMPs to come. So we really got to ensure we can deliver value for this investment now and in the future. And as I've touched on, the continuous water quality monitoring is a major, major investment. We need to understand that this is going to give us the right to have that holistic understanding of the water environment. The way it's set up at the moment, I think there is kind of question marks as to whether that is going to deliver the long-term value. So that's really the kind of backdrop within which the CaSTCo programme has been set up. Okay, so I think now I'm going to hand over to Amelia Boubacar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Hi, everybody. I'm Amina Boubacar. I'm the Director of Strategy and Stewardship at the Rivers Trust, who are a partner in the CaSTCo project. And I'm just going to cover the roadmap recommendations, which are the culmination of the last 4 years of this incredible innovation project, and the implementation plan for taking this project into full-scale business as usual. So like I said, over the last 4 years, the CaSTCo project is looked at turning innovation, really within that context that Sarah's just set up, into a clear actionable roadmap for how we're going to do much more integrated, holistic, collaborative monitoring in our catchments. This roadmap has been co-created with over 60 partners across government organisations and regulators, academia, NGOs, and industry. And it really shows how we can scale up community-based data collection into a national standardized framework for measurable environmental impact. And this roadmap really tackles 3 priorities. How do we get better and accredited citizen science? How do we start to create that national data system to give us integrated data and standards? And how do we start to do a lot more around strengthening collaborative governance and stakeholder engagement? And if we deliver these 2 recommendations, then we are setting out that ambitious vision, which is the sort of the end destination for the CaSTCo roadmap, that by 2035, every river in England and Wales can be monitored, understood, and cared for through this single open data system that can unite regulators, utilities, communities, businesses, everybody really, and hopefully help us to build the better evidence that can inform better decisions for how we're going to make our rivers healthier. So I'll dive a little bit more into each one of these 3 key recommendations. The first recommendation is about advancing citizen science integration, quality, and recognition. And this is to help us address that problem of citizen science not really being recognized as a valid monitoring method and being uncoordinated and often under-resourced. And the solution we're proposing over the next 5 years is the creation and investment into a national citizen science accreditation scheme. So this will allow us to train and equip volunteers, fund micro grants to scale local monitoring, and then establish an endowment for long-term sustainability. And we think if we deliver these things, the result is really accredited, trusted citizen science data that can go side by side with other data sets and that decision makers can use with confidence to make decisions. The second key recommendation from our roadmap is about establishing a national catchment data system and standards. This is helping us address the fact that there is data, there's lots of data out there, but it's not necessarily connected. We often work in silos when that data collection is happening. And as Sarah was saying, despite the huge investment that's going to go into continuous data monitoring of assets, it's not necessarily going to give us a full picture of what's going on. So we do have data, but it's often fragmented, siloed, and disconnected. So in order to fix that, we're proposing a national catchment data system, a shared platform that can integrate information from citizen science, statutory to regulatory data, and bring together that much more integrated data to help make stronger decisions. It is not just about storage. It is about shared standards, protocols, interoperability of data, and creating a citizen science hub to help us deliver that trusted evidence base. And hopefully, with this system in place, we can make better decisions, we can create open access data and start to build that trust and targeted actions as well. The final key recommendation in our roadmap is about strengthening collaboration, governance, and stakeholder engagement. And this is about addressing the fact that at the moment we've got very weak coordination around monitoring initiatives and often at that local scale under resource delivery of monitoring. So through this recommendation, what we're really proposing is the creation of a National Catchment Coordination Council and 9 regional accredited hubs, which very much align with the Cunliffe recommendations in the Independent Water Commission and with the sort of proposed regional planning systems. With these governance structures, we can start to connect what goes on at local scale or that catchment scale with regional and national scales as well, and start to build on existing work that's done through partnerships on the ground, but also start to bring together into this idea of integrated monitoring the regional players like the water companies, the combined authorities, business, academia, and communities. And by doing this, we think we can create the governance, the data standards, and the funding strategies that are needed to help us unify monitoring and ensure that we're producing good evidence to build lasting resilience of our rivers. So why does this matter? Well, rivers and our catchments are national assets, but the monitoring, as I've sort of already mentioned, is fragmented and is often reactive and really not giving us that consistent picture and trends. So with the CaSTCo collaborative model, what we're helping to do is build trust, consistency, integration, and hopefully smarter decision-making. And ultimately, this can help us to save time, reduce duplications, and right-size solutions, helping us to deliver better actions, better value for money, and ultimately healthier rivers as well. So in short, we think the CaSTCo roadmap and the recommendations that we've built in that roadmap the collaboration really that sits at the heart of that can help us to cut costs and drive impact in the long run. So this has been a really amazing project. The CaSTCo, even through the sort of 4 years of the innovation project, we've driven amazing activity, lots of demonstrated catchments across the country, and produced over 4.5 million data points during the life of the project. And even though it was just the sort of the trial phase of the project, what that's already helped us to prove is that shared protocols and citizen science can help to produce consistent, credible data that can be used by the decision makers with confidence to produce decisions. And beyond the £7 million of the Ofwat Innovation Fund, we've already attracted additional funding. And at the moment, we're looking to kind of build even more on that through a new Ofwat Innovation Fund bid, but also looking for an extension to really not help the project, not come to a halt, but really start to transition into that implementation stage from innovation. So that is the sort of the focus of the roadmap. How we're going to deliver the recommendations through this pathway to implementation. It's really a phased approach that we're proposing here to help us drive trial to adoption. Phase 1 was very much that sort of proof of concept of the innovation project, which sort of came to an end this year. We're now into the transition phase between now and 2027, which is about starting to engage early adopters, starting to kickstart the recommendations and the implementation. So how we're starting to move from pilots into long-term strategies as well. And then finally, we'll see a phase 2 coming in play from 2027, 2028 to begin that sort of national rollout and that scaling up into business as usual. Because what we want to see is that by 2030, in the sort of road to implementing that long-term vision that I showed in my first slide, we want CaSTCo to become the industry standard around national trusted system that can help us to embed good data infrastructure, skills, partnership, governance, and funding into business as usual. And we think that this can all be achieved within the existing industry frameworks. Just to give you an example, Sarah mentioned £650 million just for the continuous data. For us to deliver the CaSTCo roadmap over the next 5 years and to really embed it into a resilient framework, it's less than £100 million across those recommendations. So really, truly value for money. And in delivering this, there's lots of opportunities for the water sector to get involved. You already are, most of the water companies in the country, partners of the CaSTCo project. But there's a lot of opportunities now to take the recommendations and the learnings from the roadmap into direct strategic and operational benefits for the water companies. There's opportunities to align this with how continuous monitoring is being delivered in AMP8, but also starting to think about PR29 and corporate strategies as well of the future. So how do we start to use the CaSTCo principles to help us build strong, robust reporting that is evidence-led, helps to reduce and de-risk regulatory exposure, but also standardized evidence to inform how drivers and improvements are being delivered. This is also about trying to mobilize those opportunities to adopt some of the shared protocols that we're developing in the CaSTCo project, collaborate with citizen scientists in your catchments, in your regions, and use that integrated data to target investment, deliver better solutions, and even do things like optimize operation and maintenance. There's also opportunity to align with other beneficiaries of standardized, robust data, because good data, robust data, isn't just a benefit to water companies and their customers, also benefits the whole system and a whole bunch of stakeholders. And really, it can help us to reduce costs, make smarter decisions, drive stronger compliance, and renewed public trust as well. So the next immediate steps in the project are about maintaining the momentum that we've already gathered through the 4 years of the innovation project. It's about starting to take the recommendations in the roadmap into implementation. Things like confirming governance models, engaging early adopters, and communicate more broadly across the CaSTCo community. So events like the spring webinar today are good examples of the things we're going to be doing. And then it's really about scaling up that implementation. How do we start to launch accreditation scheme, establishing data standards, stand up regional hubs, and how do we start to put into practice long-term governance and funding strategies as well? There's a huge opportunity here to start to embed the CaSTCo principles into PR29 business planning, but also into that unpaid delivery, so that we can start to ensure that through this phased roadmap, the innovation that we've built today can become tomorrow's operational business as usual. So I'll leave you with a final call to action. We know that the next 5 years are a pivotal moment for the water sector. The Independent Water Commission, the Cunliffe recommendations that Sarah's already alluded to, have made this quite clear. We've got fragmented data, weak accountability, all of which are limiting, holding us back and limiting public trust and public involvement. So we think that the CaSTCo roadmap can help us to provide that fast forward plan to help fix some of these problems. We can help to turn pilots into a national trusted monitoring framework that can help to give us smarter evidence-led decisions, actions, and ultimately help our rivers to become more resilient and healthier. So we hope that you can help us to back the CaSTCo principles and the roadmap to give us much more integrated catchment monitoring and data sets. Help us to really make fragmentation into integration and data collection and storage into integrated decision making, and then hopefully move us from short-term fixes into long-term resilience. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Michelle.
Thanks very much, Amina. That's brilliant. So you've kind of heard a really good vision for where we want to take things from here. I'm now going to take you on a bit of a deep dive into what we've actually achieved so far on CaSTCo. We've put together so many building blocks for that future and that vision that Amina set out. And there are tangible things that you can take and use and adopt right now and help us build on. And really what we were focused on for the last 3 years on CaSTCo was how we can streamline that, what we call the data value chain, from the fragmented local evidence that sits in CABA partnerships in local communities, and really feed that into better decision making and decision support tools. And that pyramid on the right hand side there is a really key premise for how we've gone about that with CaSTCo, and all of the sort of methods we've looked at, the types of monitoring data and the decisions that it can support and the uses of that data really fit into that tiered framework that is all about how we can combine different types of information that may have broad sort of spatial and temporal density. If it's sort of entry-level citizen science, you can do it in lots of places, so that has value, right up through the tiers to the sort of statutory court level evidence, but that's more expensive to collect and gather, so you can do it in fewer places. If we can use all of that data together, we can make much better and stronger decisions and use a weight of evidence approach, really. So CaSTCo has run for 3 years. It's really been about investing in collaborative evidence gathering and use in demonstrator catchments and trying out lots of things. It's an innovation project, so we've tried lots of things and we've learned from each other. And in each of those demonstrator catchments, we've had the water companies, the regulators, NGOs, academics, local communities, all working together, trying things out, and then developing a community of practice to learn from each other. And I'm going to take you through some of the things we've tried and tested and built on and worked on. So, you know, collaboration and that community practice has been absolutely fundamental to how we've gone about CaSTCo. As Sarah and Amina have touched on, it's been dauntingly collaborative. We've had more than 30 partners really by the end working together, and we've tried and tested lots of different ways to do co-design of the whole program and different elements of it. And someone said at the final conference last month, we've really created a collaboration mindset around this. And I do believe that, you know, people are looking differently at how they can work together, not just within the project, but we've reached out to related initiatives like the NCEA, Stream, RDMAI. I've got a massive mind map somewhere on Miro of all the related initiatives and how we can start to bring them together rather than duplicating effort. So there's been a huge amount of experience, but networks that have built that you can draw on and build on in your work going forward. And what I want to take you through now is one of the sort of fundamental things that we've started to turn the dial on CaSTCo. It's around increasing the trust really in that fragmented local evidence base, whether it's citizen science data collected by volunteers and local communities, or data that professional staff within the NGO sector have collected, or academia. You know, there's lots of data and evidence out there, but there's been this real lack of trust in the data. And this equation, I really love it. It was something we discovered at the Northumbrian Water Innovation Festival on one of the sprints. It's based on Meister's trust equation. And it really helps to illustrate how we've started to build trust through all the work we've done on CaSTCo. So those three elements along the top all help to increase trust, whether it's the credibility of the data that we're gathering, the reliability of the whole system, the intimacy, the relationships and trust that we've built. And I'll take you through some of those sort of elements and the tangible things that we've created. But it all gets undermined by that S underneath, the sort of self-interest. And we've also worked on that. How can we guard against that and really be more collaborative and build trust rather than eroding it? So what have we done with the C bit of that equation to create credible data? Well, we've worked really hard on this on CaSTCo. There was no kind of off-the-shelf instruction manual for how we could go about organising this. We had a few models around the world that we could learn from, but really the breadth of the type of data that we were looking at in our catchments that could be of use, everything from biology to water quality to physical habitat to pollution pathways and issues, but also wider catchment land use and soil type and things like that, and soil health. So the first thing we did was start to co-design a framework that you can see in the top left there. How are we going to make sense of all the methods that are out there, creating long lists of them? We had subgroups for the different thematic areas, and we brought together lots of experts to really sort of review everything that was out there through the different tiers and map the methods against the tiers and agree different sort of suitability for different purposes. And so we've got a really good framework now that we can bring, as new methods come along, we can map them against it. And those experts did a critical review and shortlisted the most suitable citizen science methods to be able to recommend. And from those, we took a smaller subset to really test out what do we get if we invest in them, if we improve and tighten up the protocols, if we get groups, task and finish groups together where we've got diverse protocols around the country, can we agree on one national standard? And we've done that for things like outfall safari, for one of the phosphate methods, the Hanometer, for the morph physical habitat method, and we've also done some work to benchmark the riverfly methods against the EA RICT model as well. And all of this work has led to things like having really good data sets of the validation results of some of the water quality methods against lab tests. And we've invested in training. We've run training courses all around the country. We've improved the training manuals and guidance documents. We've now spun up hubs where you've got train the trainer scenarios where people can actually QA the data from the volunteers as well. And we're running some of those methods through standards agencies such as the Standing Committee of Analysts, who already publish water company Blue Book methods. They're now working with us to publish the first sort of national standard citizen science methods. So all that really lends weight to confidence that you can have in the data. And we've started to shift the dial now. It's no longer can we trust the data, but what can we do with the trusted data? And then we get onto the reliability bit of the equation. So it's great having really good methods, but how do we ensure that they're being used and that we've got enough people out there gathering that data? And that's where those volunteer coordinator roles come in each of the demo catchments. And that's in our roadmap. We need that everywhere across the country. They are essential. They really help with the recruitment and training and quality assurance part of the piece, but also keeping volunteers motivated, explaining to them how their data is going to be used, and making them feel valued and empowered to really be part of that sort of environmental stewardship that we need. We can't just be done to as communities. We have a role in helping to deliver healthier rivers in the future. And as well as that, we've got to sort of look after our volunteers, and we've done a lot of work. We've got some guidance on minimum sort of health and safety standards to ensure that all the different schemes are taking a similar approach, depending on whether volunteers have contact with the water or getting in the water. We've got different tiers of health and safety guidance available on the website. But we've also worked really hard on making sure that all the data that's gathered is reliably available as well. So we've had groups working on things like shared data principles that ensure that as groups are gathering data, they're thinking about how they can make the data, how they can quality check it, how they can manage it, how they can make it available, findable, discoverable. And I'll talk more about some of the work we've done on that as well in a bit. But then we come on to the I, the sort of intimacy, the relationships, and that has been something that's been fantastic through the demo catchments, all of them really. But the example I've got on the slide here is from the Anglian demo. You'll hear more from them in a minute. But that was really about, if you can sit down with the NGO and the Environment Agency and actually find out what is the most useful information that we could share, show them the validation results from the citizen science. And, you know, they literally sort of sat up and took notice and went, oh, okay, we can trust this data as long as you can train and quality check it. But here are the most useful things we would like your volunteers to be able to report, so that there's a balance in the system. And we've seen actual examples where citizen scientists have picked up on pollution from private sewage treatment works. The EA had the confidence to go out and act on that, and the householder was able to maintain and do some work on their septic tank, and that improved the water quality in the river, and the citizen scientists actually recorded that. So it's a really nice little neat loop, but it just shows the power of being able to build those relationships. We've seen it in all our demos. You know, in Mersey, we've had Ribble Rivers Trust and United Utilities working closely together, sharing data and being able to influence the sort of WINEP. We've got real acceptance now that the data is good quality, and as long as we can sit down and listen and communicate and discuss, then we can target that data gathering in the most effective way. So how do we guard against that self-interest? We know there's a danger with citizen science that it can be used in what we call sort of a vigilante way. You know, people can take it and target their citizen science just on the thing that they decided is the problem. Well, that's where the collaborative monitoring planning approach comes in, and there's brilliant guidance on the website now on how you can go about that with all of your partners in your CABA catchment to make sure that your monitoring is not just led by objectives that you've agreed collaboratively, but that you also slot the different tiers of monitoring together, and that you're aware of what each other are doing, and that you agree what the purpose is and who's going to act on that data. That's really critical. And it's really, like I said earlier, it's not just can we trust the data, but what can we do with the data that we now trust. So that brings me on to, you know, what we are doing with it. What decision making have we done on CaSTCo? That has been really brilliant over the last year. We've really sort of hit the ground running. Once those demos have managed to, you know, build that evidence base over a couple of years of volunteers going out, highly trained and collecting reliable information. We've started with our technical support team nationally, working with each of the demos to support them, firstly to sort of gather and interpret and visualize the data. And we tried lots of different things like catchment scorecards and building dashboards and making the data really much more easy to understand, interpret and agree on what it means. But we've also tried out weight of evidence approaches in the demos. So everything from the EA's eutrophication weight of evidence tool, which some of you may be familiar with. The example here is the Ribble, where they targeted their water blitzes and their citizen science activity on the water bodies that EA had less certainty around whether there was or wasn't a eutrophication problem. And working through that tool and slotting that data in where there's literal columns for inputting external data, you can show how you can use this data to close down that uncertainty. And this tool underpins WINEP decision making. So, you know, it's a huge opportunity to really, in a structured way, to feed that data and evidence in and to close down the uncertainty to fill knowledge gaps. And then on the right-hand side there, we've got an example of a structured evidence table working in the bean catchment. So collaboratively coming together, reviewing different pieces of evidence and working out, does it support or refute the hypothesis of, say, nutrient problems? And really starting to use some of the approaches we've tested and tried over the years in different projects and apply them in our catchments to get a consensus and a weight of evidence with all those different tiers of information. And we've also looked at how models and monitoring fit together as well through some of our demos. We've got a report now that shows how you might be able to use monitoring to target modeling to target your monitoring, but also your monitoring to calibrate your models. We've got open source models that have been produced by the Tamar catchment to really look at how citizen science can sort of help to target opportunities for things like nature-based solutions. And also with the Riverfly partnership, we've linked the Riverfly monitoring initiative schemes back to RICT, which is the Environment Agency's model for invertebrate scoring. So we now not only have trigger levels for citizen science invertebrate monitoring, but we have a target level showing where the scheme could get to. But a key thing that we've done on CaSTCo really, it's escaped from the box, it's escaping from those demo catchments. We've built a movement. We've already got some national schemes like Riverfly, but we're now seeing many, many more groups spawning and growing, and we're encouraging them to, we've got a Join CaSTCo button on our website. Sign up, have a look at our principles, things like the data sharing principles, the charters, the health and safety guidance, and adopt those and really take those as your sort of starting point. We've got Big River Watch that we've created, which is an entry-level citizen science program, simple observational tier 0, but we then put people in touch with their local citizen science program so they can grow and develop from there. And we've developed a data hub. This is our sort of proof of concept showing how if we start to build those data standards, we can easily make those disparate data sets available, findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable, and make it much easier to do more of that better decision making with data, because at least we can access and easily visualize the data as well. So I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at the CaSTCo Data Hub. You can get to it through the website. Have a look at the data principles, encourage the groups you're working with to do that. And finally, it's about the sort of social impact of what we're doing, really. It's not just about the pathway to impact using the data to target our investments. It's about all of the empowerment that you get. You know, there's hard evidence showing that citizen science and nature noticing activities gives things back to people in terms of their health and well-being. We've had people like the CCRI working with our demo catchment, social scientists, writing guidance and recommendations for how you can really maximize those benefits to communities, because it helps with retention and really sort of growing what your citizen science program can achieve and making it sustainable in the long run. So that's all from me, but hopefully you've got a flavour of some of the really tangible things that we've done on CaSTCo that you can take and use and build on. And I'm going to hand back to Lane now, I believe, for the next step.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Louisa Simpson-Brown from United Utilities, and I just wanted to introduce some of the learning we've got from the Northwest demonstrator. So I've got Ellie and Abby here with me from Ribble Rivers Trust and Mersey Rivers Trust. But first of all, I just wanted to go through some of the key learnings that we've kind of got from a water company perspective. So we've been really thinking about how systems drive decision making in the water industry, and we recognise that wealth of information that's out there can really help us understand our asset performance. So we can identify where we've got assets that are operating outside of their usual parameters. We can look at what impact our assets have on overall water quality. So are there any updates that are needed for water quality models? And it's also helping us with our AMP8 investigations. So we've got some bathing water investigations in the Northwest, and working with citizen scientists, we've been able to access much wider areas than we would have been able to just as a water company alone. So that's really helping drive that investment and understanding the risks of waters across our area. It's also helped us identify new sources. So there might be discharges that weren't previously modelled that have been able to be picked up by the citizen science data. We've also looked at contaminated surface water discharges. So this is where we've got foul water going into what should just be clean water discharges. Being able to identify those means we can resolve them and improve water quality. And it's also identified issues with private discharges. So maybe they've been operating outside of their usual parameters. We've been able to work with the regulators to do those. It's also really helped with building trust and myth busting. So being able to share data on what's going on in the Northwest has really helped kind of dismiss myths about how water companies operate. We've been able to work with regulators, people who are interested in rivers, to share data and a way forward, which is really great for us in terms of building that trust. So all of that feeds into decisions that can help us understand the reasons for not achieving good from a water framework directive perspective, but also bathing waters. So we've got that foresight as to where new bathing waters might, if they're going to be designated, issues that need to be resolved. It means we can identify and address a solution. We can target investment and improvements to the areas which will have the most impact. We can coordinate action across multiple organisations, which results in a step change in water quality, which is what we all want to achieve. So I'm going to hand over to Ellie now, who's going to give you a little bit of an insight into the Ribble area and what we've been doing there.
Thank you, Louisa. So in the Ribble catchment through the CaSTCo project, we've been refining our river blitz technique, where we bring up to about 30 volunteers together on a single day to test the health of 10 to 15 targeted river locations across a catchment to very rapidly build up a picture of the pressures impacting on the rivers and their sources. This year, we used our river blitz technique to accompany the Environment Agency's regulatory monitoring and also United Utilities asset monitoring upstream of the inland bathing water at the bridge, which is currently unfit to swim in due to the high bacterial concentrations that are regularly recorded there. So owing to last year's failure, the EA wanted to increase their spatial coverage of this year's weekly monitoring to try and home in on the sources of that fecal pollution that's causing the bathing water to fail. And they consulted with Ribble Rivers Trust, and we used the results of our previous River Blitz citizen science events to suggest tributaries that were worth monitoring, which are shown by the stars on this map. United Utilities also started conducting monitoring of key assets and also collecting data to create source apportionment models for bacteria to direct their future investments, and they're shown by grey stars on this map. But neither United Utilities or the Environment Agency can sample everywhere that they would like to, owing to resource limitations, and they can't always get landowner permission to survey on their land. However, Ribble Rivers Trust have a really long-standing positive relationship with a lot of the local landowners within that catchment, and they rarely say no if we ask if we can take some water samples on their land. And so what we did is we utilised citizen science to sample additional locations upstream of the Edisford Bridge bathing waters to complement the monitoring that's being conducted by United Utilities and the Environment Agency. And we used E. coli tests, which are called R cards, which are absolutely fantastic, and they cost less than £2 a test, as well as 7 tests for 7 other water quality parameters. And we pieced these this kit together based on a a combination of learnings that have come out of the CaSTCo project. So various demos have been trialing to see what equipment works well, what produces reliable results, what's cost effective. And we took all that learning that we've learned from the other CaSTCo demos to put this piece of kit together. When you hear from the Anglian demo a little bit later this morning, you will see an example of how CaSTCo has enabled that learning to be shared between the different project partners. So in terms of what we did, and don't worry that you can't see the detail on these graphs, you don't need to. What we started off doing through a citizen science approach was monitoring water quality on every major trib upstream of the Eddisford Bridge bathing water. And what that did is it identified 3 tributaries which had significantly higher levels of E. coli than the other tributaries, including Bashall Brook, which is the bottom left red square on the map. So then we reacted to that those results, and we organised a citizen science river blitz that focused just on Bashall Brook. And this identified that while there's horrible levels of E. coli everywhere on the day that we did the sampling, there were 5 standout locations that were significantly worse than others. So again, we adapted to what we'd already found, and we decided to run fortnightly river blitzes that were focusing on all those major upstream tributaries, but also the worst of the Bashall Brook sites, to try and identify locations that had persistent E. coli and other water quality issues, which we achieved. And over time, there were some real standouts of sites that had persistent issues. So again, we adapted our process, and we utilised the same citizen science techniques to carry out detailed monitoring on a particular tributary that was an issue, to really home in on the exact locations where that E. coli is entering the tributary. And also, while we were doing this, some local intelligence came up that alerted us to a potential source of bacteria that we hadn't even been monitoring, we weren't even really aware of. So we reacted to this, and we used the same citizen science monitoring to monitor that inlet, and the results are absolutely foul, and it's coming from a private source, not the main sewer network. So we've shared all, oops, sorry, I've skipped ahead. We shared the results of all this monitoring with United Utilities and the Environment Agency at their request. And the Environment Agency is using it to direct their advisory and regulatory visits to where they are most needed. And as part of this process, United Utilities asked us to add a couple of citizen science locations they would love to monitor, but they don't have the resource to, so that they can gather some extra data to feed into their bacterial source apportionment models. So we did this. There's 3 locations shown on this map. There's 2 sites that were monitored upstream of their sewage treatment work at Barn Aldwick that they were monitoring, and what the citizen science testing identified was that there's significant E. coli concentrations in the river before it even reaches the sewage treatment work that suggests there are other sources as well. And on this final slide, there's some quotes from United Utilities and Environment Agency partners around the beneficial impacts of having citizen science monitoring complement their own and enhance their own monitoring. I won't go through these. You're welcome to screenshot them and read them later if you would like. But in a nutshell, the reason why citizen science has been so effective in this instance is that having these lower cost methods that have been proven through the CaSTCo project to produce reliable data, as well as a large number of local volunteers, means that more samples can be taken over a greater spatial and temporal resolution. We can gain access to locations that the water companies and the regulators just cannot get permission to access. And also citizen science can be adaptive and reactive, and help us to track down issues and record evidence of issues as they are happening. And so essentially the citizen science monitoring enables us to detect issues that just would have gone undetected otherwise, but it means that the real sources of the issues can be identified and addressed rather than us having to make assumptions about where these efforts are needed. So I'm going to pass on to Abby now from the Mersey Rivers Trust to talk about the work that they have been doing.
Thank you. So we're going to have a little look at the River Bowling catchment area, which is part of the Mersey demo area for the CaSTCo project, which took in multiple stakeholders and partners to collaborate, looking for to better our rivers as such. We did primarily think initially that the River Bollen was one of our better rivers in the Mersey catchment area. We started doing some of the monitoring with our citizen science and realised it wasn't actually performing as well as we thought, which surprised quite a lot of the partners, including the Upper Mersey Catchment Partnership. So the monitoring programme that we had set out using our citizen scientists was to help us understand RNAGs, to apologies for going blank for a second there. The monitoring programme was to help us understand the RNAGs that influence future WinApps with our collaboration with UU, to plan out some of our future actions, not just for UU, but also for us as a trust, to help achieve a good ecological status. So we were looking at various pollutions that sources that we hadn't initially thought were going to be that big of a contributor. One of them being an industry foaming event that produced about 2-foot foam on the River Bollen, which wasn't something we had predicted prior to starting our monitoring programme. No relevance to UU in the end. It's trying to collaborate with EEA as well of how we would carry on our monitoring and how we start developing our actions to get the River Bollen towards a good ecological status. We have cooperated with our monitoring programme to work with universities, in particular Manchester University, to help with some of the laboratory work as well as UU's own labs as well, for some of our own river blitz that we do in the River Bollen. So for our monitoring programme, we did use a variety of methods. As I've mentioned, we've done a couple of river blitzes. We've done at least 2 each year so far, with cooperation with Manchester Uni, UU River Rangers, as well as EEA's citizen science officer as well, to help get a more of an in-depth picture of what's going on in the catchment with pollution sources such as the septic tanks that are in vast areas of the Bollen catchment, landfill areas, and also runoff from the airport and the motorways. So that was our focus so far. We are looking at how we can carry on with our funding to carry on with our progress of monitoring the River Bollen, and hopes of making more regular river blitzes along the River Bollen, so we can actually develop a greater understanding of how this is impacting the RNAGs and future WinApp actions. Thank you.
Welcome to the Anglian Demo Showcase as part of the Spring Innovation Platform. I'm really excited to be here today with Steve, Lane, John Finley and now Claiborne to talk about the work that the Anglian Demo have done in terms of building trust and that framework for working with citizen scientists. So I'll get started. Oh, hang on a second. Are these your slides, Steve? Mine don't seem to be in here.
Yes, these are my slides. I'm not sure what's happened with the master deck, but your slide should have come up first in the master deck.
Yeah, that's what's confused me. That's fine. I'll hand over then directly to you, Steve. I was just going to quickly say, so my slides really talked around what we learned from CaSTCo from a water company perspective. And I think there's kind of 5 key points I wanted to make, and then I'll hand over to Steve. I think the first point was around CaSTCo being a real key vehicle to build trust between partners and between us as a water company and our citizen scientists around our region. It's given a real clear framework for us as a water company to work with citizen scientists and be able to point them in the direction of CaSTCo, its principles, its case studies, and Steve and Elle and John, who have worked really hard to build that trust between us all. So that's been a key learning of CaSTCo. I also wanted to say that in terms of having that consistent engagement and dedicated resource in the catchment, it harks back to Michelle's point around that collaborative mindset. So we've all been able to work really closely together to navigate challenges and questions and really build a kind of program together, always coming back to the kind of point that we're all after the same objective, which is environmental improvement. We perhaps sit on different, like different companies, but ultimately that's all, that's really what we're all here to do as a water company and as an Anglian demo. So that's been really key. So I really want to just highlight the work that Steve, John and Elle and others have done as part of the Anglian demo, because I think their kind of mindset and kind of approach to the work of us all working together has enabled us to deliver as much as we have as the Anglian demo. So that's something that I wanted to call out. And as a result of that, for example, like John Finley and I have a monthly call to discuss citizen science kind of issues or questions in the area. And I'm looking to do something similar with Darren, which is John's counterpart in Lincolnshire. So that's been a key kind of improvement as part of CaSTCo. And I also want to say that it's been a really visible project nationally, and also like, in terms of our East Anglian area. So for example, I was in a conversation with the Catchment partnership yesterday, and they were really keen to sign up to CaSTCo and be part of it and learn from CaSTCo. So learn in terms of the collaborative monitoring planning and catchment planning. So and the same is said, across East Anglia. So places outside of our Anglian demo, so like the Upper Bedford News Catchment Partnership and the CAM, for example. Going forward, I see a huge benefit of working more closely with citizen scientists as a water company. So, for example, kind of similar to the last presentation, looking at how we can use their data to better understand how we can change our NAG, so actually drive that ecological improvement. And that could be particularly looking at priority habitat, so chalk streams. Obviously, that's a priority habitat for us, and we've got a flagship chalk stream project in the Lark, where we really do see working with RLCP and their citizen scientists to monitor improvements as a result of the chalk stream project would be really beneficial. We also see that in terms of headwaters, and we've got a second Ofwat innovation bid going in, looking at how do we best work with headwaters. So that's with 6 demo water companies that's come as like directly from our involvement in CaSTCo. So those are kind of 2 key areas to work on. And also as part of our advanced WINET programme, obviously that's looking at catchment planning across 11 target catchments, so the Norfolk, Lark and Cam catchments. And we really see kind of citizen scientists being the fundamental bedrock to kind of understand, are we asking and answering the right questions in the right places? Then how can a catchment plan be developed to actually target those questions and answers? And then finally, how can those projects be financed? So that's something that we're really keen to work with and develop over the next 5 years. The other area that I can see us working really closely with citizen scientists is monitoring nature-based solutions. So as part of our Advanced WINET programme, we've got an £11 million grant scheme, which will look at putting in place nature-based solutions to target those RNAG improvements. And so working with citizen scientists to monitor the before and after impacts of MBS interventions will, one, kind of prove the success of MBS, which is kind of a separate question, but then also show the kind of benefits of the AWINUP approach as opposed to the traditional WINUP approach, and then kind of further the policy improvements in the water sector. So again, that's another key role for citizen scientists. And then finally, I put something in the chat around the RCARs and the E. coli work. I really see that as being fundamental to our bathing water teams and actually trying to understand E. coli sources in bathing waters in more detail. So again, there's quite a lot of learnings that we've gained from CaSTCo, and we're really keen to be involved in the second Ofwat bid, the continuation of CaSTCo, and trying to drive the impacts of the roadmap forward. So yeah, I'll hand over to Steve, but we've learned a lot as part of CaSTCo. We've gone on a definite journey, but the key to all that is the partnership,
I think I've got a big photo on my head.
Communication and honesty. So yeah, thank you. On over, Steve.
Thank you, Becky. So in Anglian Demo, we've sort of set out to connect with communities and work together to fill those data and evidence gaps, as we've heard from Michelle and others. We've looked to deliver robust and consistent data for decision making, be that by water companies, environment agency or other catchment partners. And we've tested a framework to turn data into action. And as Becky alluded to, we all are all on the same page. We want to see our rivers get healthier. So that's a lot of work. So from collaborative monitoring planning with our catchment partners in the Wensum and the Lark, volunteer recruitment and training, data systems, data validation, quality assurance, quality control, developing a pollution reporting and feedback tool for citizen science, through to testing citizen science citizen science data in decision making. We've tested out an ecosystem, if you like, in Anglian that's needed to turn data into action. All of these different elements coming together, as we'll see as we move through some of the examples. So across the Wensum and the Lark, we've worked with our catchment partners to collaboratively plan what monitoring is needed. And the example on the top left map there is some work that the UEA did to look at all of the existing phosphate data held across the Wensum catchment by catchment partners to look to see what we know about where our problems are and where the gaps are in our data and evidence. So as we know, constraints on resources and changing priorities often mean there are gaps in our evidence base in our catchments. That means decision making is really difficult, especially when that picture is incomplete. And when we're investing in improvements that, for example, water company improvements could cost many millions of pounds, we need to have that confidence in our data. But in this example, on the right-hand side of the screen, in the River Tudd, as an example, in the Anglian demo, the Environment Agency only regularly monitor one site at the bottom end of the catchment. So how do we tackle that? Well, connecting with communities provides a solution to this. It fosters collaboration, not just across catchment partners, but citizen scientists and communities who are also true catchment partners. It fosters understanding, mutual agreement around data and evidence. And citizen scientists, as Ellie and others have alluded to, can get to more places more often than the Environment Agency can or our water companies can. And the map on the right shows just that in practice. Citizen science are able to monitor on a weekly basis 12 sites all the way up the Tudd catchment to give us a much better picture of what's going on. So robust data is really critical to collaborative decision making. We all need to be able to trust the data that we're making decisions on. So as part of our work in 2023, we set out to test real-world samples, real-world citizen science samples, using handheld digital photometers against lab testing by both the UEA and the EA lab. Why do we want to do this? Well, we wanted to understand how we can use citizen science data and assure quality to end questions around its validity and ensure it's taken seriously in decision making, potentially enabling its use in Environment Agency models. For example, Michelle alluded to the weight of evidence tool for eutrophication. So the example we've got here shows the results on one day from sites on the River Tudd where citizen scientists went out and sampled their sites. And a sample also from the same bucket went off to the UEA lab in the orange and the EA lab at the bottom at the EA monitoring site in the grey. Overall, phosphate correlates really well against both UEA and EA results. And these data are helping to provide a much better understanding of phosphate sources on the Tudd, illustrating the importance and potential of citizen science. You see on the left-hand side of the graph, the example, a site there has been monitored for 2 years, and actually the mean citizen science phosphate of that site is 0.03 milligrams per litre, which actually meets the Wensum's DWPP phosphate target. So, you know, it is really, really important to build up that picture of what's happening in our catchments. As a further measure of long-term data quality, we can actually compare long-term data sets where citizen science monitoring occurs at EA monitoring sites by design. And this example is from the EA AN Tudd 70 Cossey Park monitoring point, which the Environment Agency sample weekly, and so does our citizen scientists. Results for both the phosphate and ammonia are encouragingly close across a 2-year period. With mean values of sampling well within the margins of accuracy of the equipment that our citizen science are using. So it's a really useful ongoing tool to show that ongoing data quality. Building on that, we worked with the River Lark Catchment Partnership, and we were able to undertake comparative testing at some sites in the Lark with higher ammonia levels. And crucially, ammonia appears to correlate very well at these high levels. And we are actually confident it's good enough to warn us of acute toxic events. That's really important in terms of things like pollution reporting, which we'll come on to. We've developed and tested a data validation audit trial where citizen scientists were asked to blind test colourless standard solutions, and those solutions were also tested by the Environment Agency lab. This is important as a potential cost-effective, scalable and consistent way for citizen science groups to demonstrate their data quality. As you can see from the graph on the right, most of the Anglian demo volunteer results for phosphate in this case were within the range of accuracy of the equipment, so plus minus 0.04 milligrams per litre from the standard. And the mean is shown in the green, and the Environment Agency lab result is shown in the blue in the middle of the graph. So encouragingly, if the animation is going to work, that includes phosphate checkers that have been working on a weekly basis for 2.5 years, which is really, really good to be able to do. And crucially as well, this provides us with a framework, a mechanism by which we can identify individual outliers, and we can follow up on that. So we can look at the citizen scientist's technique. Are they following the standardized methodology in the right way? Is their equipment performing as it should? Is it starting to fail? Are there reagents in date? If there are problems with a batch of reagents that we can then identify. All of that can be assessed and followed up on. That's really important as part of a robust quality assurance sort of accreditation type of mechanism for citizen science that all partners can have trust in. We've recently run a second national trial of this approach with encouraging results, which we'll be reporting on soon. And demonstrably high data quality is key for providing useful data to inform pollution incident response and maximising the effect that citizen science data can have on decision making in weight of evidence approaches. So, for example, we've tested our River Tud data against the Environment Agency's weight of evidence tool. Working collaboratively within CaSTCo framework has enabled us to test novel ways of working and engage communities with citizen science. So this example is from the River Tat on the Wensum catchment, where again we have one single Environment Agency monitoring point down at the bottom end of the catchment. And the collaborative monitoring plans to the Catchment Partnership identified the need for more monitoring and more data to understand why the TAT is failing its P target at the Environment Agency monitoring site. Weekly citizen science monitoring and water blitzes have identified problem point sources, which you can see on the map example on the left, these big red dots indicating high phosphate load, high phosphate concentrations. The citizen scientists raised concerns about increasing phosphate at West Rudham, and a pollution report was made to the EA. So that's that site that's highlighted with the red circle. Crucially, the Environment Agency took follow-up action based on trust in the quality of the citizen science data and that evidence. The responsible party was identified, who confirmed that they had taken action and undertook to undertake more frequent maintenance of their system. Citizen science, now this is a real key benefit, gets to the nub of it really, that citizen science means post-intervention monitoring, normally impossible for the Environment Agency to undertake, particularly on these more minor pollution type of incidents. Part of that, the citizen scientist gets feedback and can see themselves the river health actually improving. You see that on the graph, the rising phosphate levels seen in weekly monitoring, the pollution report gone into the EA in the intervention, and the much improved results following afterwards, and an improvement in that phosphate load. That's really, really critical. You know, the fact that the citizen scientist is actually seeing the river health improving with their own eyes, that builds trust, as Michelle has alluded to, and Ellie from the Ribble demo. That trust is shared with peers and the local community. So that is building a sense of, working together and collaboration. It's so critical and so important for us. We have numerous examples of cryptic pollutions affecting river health in the demo that would have not been identified without trained citizen scientists actively monitoring. And that's enabled us to develop and test a pollution reporting tool, which we're working on with the Environment Agency and other partners. Collaboration has been a key to everything we've done. It's vital to have that support and resources from local rivers trusts and catchment partnerships. The Rivers Trust nationally, water companies, so working with Becky and Anglian Water, and John and the Environment Agency and others in the Environment Agency have supported CaSTCo across the demos across the country. Without that dedicated support and considerable time and material investment from all these partners, our CaSTCo area and others wouldn't have been able to achieve what we have. And the most important thing that I'll end on before heading back to Becky is thank you to all those citizen scientists who've contributed to our work. They are as much a part of the river catchment community as ourselves and the water companies are, and without them, our rivers won't improve in health. So thank you to them. I'll hand back to Becky.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve. So I put my last slide in the chat, so hopefully everyone can see that. I just wanted to leave with the fact that us all as water companies, I think, are trying to understand how best to act in a post-conflict world. So what does society ask of us as a water company? What do our customers ask of us, and how best can we actually change our NAC status, so actually move the dial of environmental improvement? We see citizen scientists as absolutely key for that through partnership working. Our second Head Start bid and the second CaSTCo bid as well, to kind of further the work that we've done as part of CaSTCo. I wanted to leave you with two quotes that I think about often, really. I think we're all in this sector because we want to make a meaningful difference and make the world and our environment and our rivers a better place. So I often think of the first one, which is, we cannot wait for great visions from great people, for they are in short supply. It is up to us to light our own small fires in the darkness. And I think we've all done that across our demos as part of CaSTCo. And then the second one is just a real positive one. So never doubt that a small group of people can change the world. It is the only thing that has. And I think, again, our citizen scientists, like Steve said, are the ones on the ground that are providing the evidence for us all then collectively to act on, to change policy or to change our investment programs. And I'm really proud to be part of that, a small part of that partnership as part of CaSTCo. So thank you, and thank you to everyone that's worked on CaSTCo from the Anglian side.
We now have the Q&A session. We have our remote presenters as well as our in-person presenters available to answer any of your questions. So if you haven't put your question into the chat yet, please don't hesitate to do so. So to make sure our lovely in-person presenters can be seen, I'm going to quickly duck off and just put the questions that we've received so far. So the first question. There is public distrust of the water sector and its ability to make things better. How can CaSTCo help restore that public confidence?
I'll pick this one up. So I think, there's lots that needs to happen to improve everybody's confidence around how, when and why the environment is going to improve. And CaSTCo's got a really vital role to play in there. I think I spoke about right at the beginning that there has been a reduction in the monitoring of rivers. That's reducing everybody's confidence, and actually getting, empowered citizens working as part of a partnership with a collaborative monitoring plan to help understand the issues in a river system so that we can work collectively to address them, I think is a really important step forward in addressing this.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, and next question, and this one's for Michelle. Just having more spatial and temporal data is not going to be the solution to healthier catchments. How does CaSTCo link data with decision-making to support river catchment functioning?
Yeah, I touched on it in my presentation earlier. Obviously, we've had a lot of focus in CaSTCo on improving data quality and making it available. But we also have been working really hard, particularly over the last year of the project, on how we can use that to make better collaborative decisions. So some of those approaches, and you've heard Steve and Ellie and Co talking about how they've done that in the demos, and we've had key support roles nationally. I think that's the key thing. People like Paul Hume, who've had decades of experience doing this in the Environment Agency and as a contractor for DEFRA on the evidence and measures projects. It's really about building some structure to this. So first of all, you start with your collaborative monitoring plan and ensure that when you went to collect the data, you had a key use in mind and you were clear what the data gap was and how you were going to fill it with all the different tiers of information. But then, you know, using tools that are out there, whether it's the SAGES model. I mean, we saw examples before CaSTCo. Colleagues in UU were working on the Petrol project and looking at how you can slot monitoring into existing decision support tools to improve the accuracy of what they're telling us about where problems are coming from. But also you can use, you know, we touch on the sort of modelling and decision support tools that have been used on CaSTCo and how you can use them in combination with your monitoring data, things like the eutrophication weight of evidence tool that the Environment Agency use. There's so many examples out there of how we can take that wealth of information, not just throwing the kitchen sink at collecting lots of data and then scratching our heads about what it means, but plan it effectively, ensure that you understand what your local evidence is already telling you so that you can target your monitoring, and then use some of those tools and approaches and the expertise that's out there to make sense of it and to come to a consensus. You know, you're never going to have 100% certainty on anything, but if you can collaborate and review the evidence together, you can really come to a consensus and work out what that sort of weight of evidence is telling you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. And we have one for Ellie. What was the name of the E. coli test used in the Northwest demo? And is there a case study written up from Northwest demo, the E. coli River Blitz work that I could share with our bathing water team?
So the tests are called R cards. I think they're produced by Roth Scientific, but I can send you a link, Becky. And there is a case study from the Ribble on the CaSTCo web to touch on the bathing water investigations, but not in a huge amount of detail. We do have some other information on the Ribble Trust website that I can send you, but I can also ask for it to be put on the CaSTCo website as well for anyone.
Thank you very much. And how is the CaSTCo helping you as a water company share your data more openly? What implications did you have to consider? This is a good one for Louisa and Becky.
Yeah, so I think with CaSTCo, it's more about the data is available to everybody. So the data that's being collected on a catchment isn't necessarily water company data. It's real-time data as to what's going on out in the catchment. But with real-time monitoring that's coming in shortly, there'll be lots more information available. There's already spill information available in the public domain. But yeah, that real-time monitoring, that driver that we've got at the moment as water companies to install monitored, will just provide much more information going forwards as well. Becky, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll just come in terms of the visualization of that data. So through the Anglian demo, we've created the dashboard, so for the Wensum and the Lark, and I often get asked, like, there's a lot of data all out there. How do you sort of coordinate it and kind of, just get kind of one story and one picture around what's happening in the catchment? And then the next point is, and then how do we all act on it in various ways? So I think I'd hark back to the strength of the catchment partnership, and actually that almost be like a convening model to then kind of get kind of collect everyone's data. And also, so we've obviously got those local Anglian demo models, but then obviously the national CaSTCo dashboard. I think there's quite a bit to do in terms of that kind of storytelling around what data we have. I think it's also made us as a water company think around that data sharing and actually what's useful. And I think back to Michelle's point again around trust. I think CaSTCo has been a great vehicle to build trust with the data, with partnerships that will only be furthered going forward. So I think everyone sort of says this around CaSTCo, but it's a start of a movement and a momentum that everyone's built collectively over CaSTCo. That's only going to continue in the future. So we're really kind of excited to be part of that. And part of the answer is around, like, how do we tell the story and how do we kind of show what data we have and then act on it for environmental improvement.
Thank you very much. I have another question actually for Louisa. Sorry. Are there examples from the project of how the co-design process has balanced the potential tension between the data groups want to collect and the data most likely to deliver improvements, if possible, with reference to the work of specific water company teams?
It's quite a long question. I think for me, it's more about agreeing that collaboration plan, that sampling plan before you start in a catchment. So really coming together, all the different people who've got an interest in that catchment. What data do we want to collect? What decisions would it help drive? What questions do we need answering? So it's more getting interested people together at the start and agreeing what is the right approach for that catchment. So it might not be that there's a water company driver, but there's an issue that nobody really understands, and therefore by working together we get that understanding of a catchment. So it's not always water company driven in terms of what happens within a catchment. It depends on the needs and the requirements and who's interested, and as I said, what questions we're aiming to answer as part of that sampling.
Great. And this is something we've touched on in the chat, but we had a question around Great Ambition, i.e. like monitoring of every river. Does the ambition stretch to smaller watercourses, i.e. drains managed by internal drainage boards?
Yeah, and again, it comes back to exactly what is needed in that catchment. So that will drive where you're going to sample, how frequently, what parameters for. So that's all agreed up front as part of that collaborative monitoring agreement for that catchment. So yes, it could stretch to small tributaries. Just depends what questions you're trying to answer and what data you need.
And can I just quickly...
Oh yeah, I was going to add to that as well. Sorry, Becky, do you want to go first?
I'll be really quick, Michelle, and then I'll hand over to you. I was just thinking in terms of what we've discovered as part of CaSTCo through our baseline monitoring work in the Wensum. That is that descriptive work, so kind of smaller works, it tend to be in rural catchments that serve small streams, can have a varied impact on the environment, and we've got some monitoring data to show that, and then that's helped us then prioritize like how might we work with kind of the worst performing ones in the future. So there's that kind of element, so kind of like understanding more about what's happening through data and citizen science monitoring. And then that's led on to that Head Start bid, really trying to focus on how do we change the policy so that water companies can invest in headwater streams and catchments and descriptive works through nature-based solutions. So I think I just wanted to kind of bring up those two elements, like as in it does, of course, yes, it does cover kind of those smaller water bodies, particularly where there are, there are impacts on the environment. And I mentioned chalk streams before, but obviously, chalk streams are, again, another priority for us as a water company, and not all of them are very big. So I would say, yeah, it definitely does cover that, but it does kind of depend on like what's the issue and what question are we answering where. But I'd make the plea for chalk streams and headwaters to be included and to have more visibility in terms of monitoring.
And I would just say, our ambition on CaSTCo is to bring everyone under the umbrella. We're not the management, we're not sort of deploying people out to small watercourses, but what we are doing, where there are friends or groups, where there are groups locally that want to monitor their local water bodies, we've got toolkits, we've got guidance, we've got approaches that they can adopt and use, recommended methods, things that will help them make sure that the data they're collecting firstly is known about to the catchment partnership that they are located within, but also has a clear sort of pathway to impact, that they're starting to use the sort of discipline that we've developed through CaSTCo and through our partner network to really make an impact with their data wherever they're monitoring.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right. We now have a question from Claire from Yorkshire Water. You shared an interesting insight that petrofilm can achieve similar results to the R cards. Was petrofilm considered as an option at all in this project? And was there a reason R cards were favoured?
I can start that. I don't know if Ellie wants to comment on why they specifically chose R cards. I mean, what we did, I touched on the method audit process that we ran through CaSTCo. We had to focus the method audit on certain areas, just from a resourcing point of view. We wanted to do an audit of bacterial water quality methods, and we started to long list some of them, including Petri film, but we simply didn't have the time resource to be able to do a full audit. So to, you know, literally compare Petri film R cards plus all the other methods. And it's been a really fast evolving field over the time that CaSTCo's been running. We've seen many, many more things pop up in that field with all the news that we've had on bathing waters. So my colleague Simon Browning, who's a monitoring expert, had definitely looked at some of these and made sort of ad hoc recommendations, but we didn't do that formal you know, group of experts sitting down and coming up with criteria and weighting them. That's still a piece of work that we'd want to be able to do in the future. Obviously funding dependent, but what we did do through that community practice, I mean, Kat Kavanagh over with Water Rangers had already been using the R card, so we developed some really good experience with those and recommendations and protocols, and we would have sort of gleaned the experience of people who'd already been using those methods and built on it that way as a more informal approach, I suppose.
So the reason we chose to use R cards was we'd seen throughout the course of CaSTCo other demos had been trialing various methods, as Michelle said, and it was earlier this year that there was a demonstration from Water Rangers of the R cards, and it really kind of struck home how easy they were to use, how they could help us to answer the questions that we were trying to ask around where is the bacteria coming from that's impacting our bathing waters. We looked into them, they were very cost effective. So it was really through that knowledge share from other CaSTCo partners, even though they hadn't managed to be specific focus on bacterial testing like there had been on some of the other methods. We gleaned enough information from what everyone else had been doing to come to our own decisions, and yeah, we're really pleased with them. We think they're fantastic bits of kit.
And it's worth saying as well, we did do some comparison testing of bacterial water quality methods on the team Catchment and with some other partners, so comparing things like the Bacterisk with lab tests and so on. But yeah, like I said, it was limited to what we were able to do with the resource and sort of not spreading ourselves too thin. And the way we picked which areas that we focused on was all done through co-design and collaboration as well. We looked at what the objectives were in the monitoring plans in all of the demo catchments and focused our method audit on that. So yeah, it was a prioritization exercise, but it's definitely still a need, and we have been working with some of the other sort of networks out there like Surface Against Sewage and others who were doing Bacti monitoring and built a bit of a community of practice, but yeah, still plenty we can do.
Right. Thank you very much. We now have a couple of questions for Sarah. First one is, how will you measure success throughout the next stages of CaSTCo?
Excellent. So there's a few sort of elements of this. So we've obviously got our roadmap, and you know the ultimate end game is rolling out that roadmap. But one of the things we've identified kind of on that route is we need to do more to really demonstrate the use cases, and we've actually got a separate Ofwat innovation bid that's looking to do that, and that will be getting into really tangible things around actually how is it making more effective decisions. Does that mean we are delivering better value? Are we saving money? What's the outcome of having that new data and information that we wouldn't have had previously? So that's kind of number one for me, but then there will be other metrics in there as well. You know, there's clearly wider societal benefits of citizen science in terms of the people participating in it are hopefully gaining quite a bit themselves that we need to consider. But I think also trying to get to more shared action around what we need to do to improve our rivers and make sure that all elements of the environment are being improved, I think is really key as well. But you know, what's really going to swing decision makers in terms of enabling us to really scale CaSTCo is going to be the pound notes, isn't it? So I think that's what we've really got to demonstrate, is how does it make things more efficient, better value as we make decisions going forwards. So that's it.
Great. And second one, CaSTCo brings together more than 30 organizations, so water companies, NGOs, academic bodies, regulators, in demonstrated catchments. What are the main benefits and also the greatest challenges of such cross-sector collaboration?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. So in terms of the benefits, I think they are really significant. I think we've learned a lot more because there's a lot of kind of live sharing within the project. So I think that's been hugely useful. I think it's been really useful in terms of gaining the attention of regulators and government, because there are so many partners involved in here, and we're a kind of a diverse range of partners. It's hard to ignore CaSTCo as an initiative. I think one of the kind of challenges is it does make managing the program more complex, and behind the scenes there are points at which that has been more complex, but the value we've got out of it has been really significant in terms of how we drive that collective action to improve our rivers, and that's so important for the whole country, and it's really important for the water sector that we get to that point. So that, I think, is it for me.
Great, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
This one's probably for Michelle or Steve. You mentioned the support of the sector and the public are incredibly important to the success of CaSTCo. How have you motivated your key players to stay engaged?
I might hand to Steve as a sort of demo catchment rep, because I know the volunteer coordinator role and people you've worked with, Steve, have been really key to this.
Absolutely, thanks, Michelle. So yes, having that Al Clybourne from Norfolk Rivers Trust working in that citizen science officer volunteer coordinator role as part of a collaborative partnership is critical to that. Communication and collaboration, these two C words, are really, really key to it, and having that communication and collaboration with local communities through our citizen scientists as well, so that they are with us on that journey of evidence discovery, of validating that evidence and actually using that evidence to make decisions with. And they're, as we alluded to, the really wonderful thing is for them to see with their own eyes those improvements in river health. That really does build that trust, and that trust is both reflected within the community, our collaborative partnership, but also those citizen scientists sharing that trust with their peers and their own local communities. I mean, we've got wonderful examples of citizen scientists actually of their own volition going out and giving talks on what they're doing to their local communities, and actually, proudly talking about their role in making their local river better. And that, for all of us, should be something that is invaluable. I know we talk about pound notes, we've got to have that investment, but we need that people and that passion at the centre of it too, to make all of this work for us. So that's what I would add.
Fantastic. All right, and we just have our last sort of few questions here. This one's for Michelle. How is data sharing handled within CaSTCo? What platforms or open data tools are used, and how do they promote transparency and collaboration? Do you envision any collaboration opportunities with Stream, for example?
Thanks very much. Yes, don't just envisage it. We're already working with Stream and looking to build on what they've done and collaborate together. I mean, what we've done on data sharing, we've developed, the initial sort of foundation was our data sharing principles. So again, co-designed, getting everyone together to agree on what we're aiming for, what are our underlying principles. It's a very messy data sharing landscape out there. So we were never setting out to create one data platform and replace everything. There's a lot of vested investment and interest and different platforms that we have no desire to sweep aside and start again. That wouldn't be our approach. But what we do want to do, for example, is get them working towards some of those data principles and open sharing, getting those systems interoperable so that you have open APIs and you can make data machine readable and standardized. We've still got a lot of work to do, but we've done some really important groundwork with Stream, with the Open Data Institute. We had a sprint at the Northumbrian Water Innovation Festival earlier this year, looking at how we can increase trust in citizen science data through developing a data standard, so you can encode key elements that are needed to increase the credibility and the trust in the data alongside the actual measurements themselves. And we started to put together a plan for a water commons, so looking at how we can get all of the contributing groups and the data owners to own the sort of governance and the data model. So some really important groundwork that we've done on that. There are existing schemes out there like the Water Quality Exchange Standard. Data Stream in Canada is built on that, and we know Water Rangers and others in this country are using it. So we've got some great, again, building blocks that we can move forward on. But what we've done on CaSTCo is try and establish some principles. We've got some draft data management guidance as well that we're going to be putting out. John Finley and others in the EA have written some brilliant data QA guidance that's on the EA's citizen science website. So there's some really great stuff out there, and we've done some auditing of the data systems that match across to the methods that we've audited, with some guidelines on how those data systems can move towards our data principles. And in some cases we've invested in them. For example, Outfall Safari, we've now got a national platform for the first time. It's just in beta on Cartographer, but it's going to go live over the next few months. So hopefully that answers that.
Great. So I think we'll finish up the Q&A. Thank you so much, Michelle, and all the presenters for sharing your insights with everyone today. And to the audience, I really appreciate you taking the time to attend the showcase today. Please remember that we have 2 upcoming showcases. And if you are interested in attending events like this, we have our spring mailing list. Spring hosts various innovation and knowledge sharing events throughout the year. So if you are interested, please use the QR code below. Another reminder that in early December, we have a CaSTCo webinar. So if you've enjoyed the event today, you can sign up to that Zoom webinar via the QR code. If you're looking to get in touch with any of the presenters today, I've included a short form in the Teams chat below. We're more than happy to help facilitate and connect you with any of the presenters. So if you have any further questions that you didn't get to or insights that you want to learn from any of the presenters, please don't hesitate to. But thank you everyone so much today for taking the time. We really appreciate it. And please make sure you do sign up to the upcoming showcases and CaSTCo webinar.